I'm not entirely sure that I should be posting this here, but I have recently experienced some really odd events and have no rational explanation for some of them, or at least any that I can come up with by myself. I apologize for the long post in advance. For background, I live in a small housing estate located in the UK countryside, and out here I feel privileged and safe enough to enjoy taking nightly walks. For context, the estate is about the size of a very small town, only taking around 8 minutes to walk all the way around it, and is full of regular houses that are quite close together. The people that live here are incredibly well-mannered compared to other places that I've had to live in for university. I normally go on these walks anywhere between 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning to avoid other people, because of COVID, and simply because I enjoy the peacefulness and stars. This may sound typical of these kinds of posts, but I try to explain everything I come across in life that I don't quite understand with some kind of logic, or accept that there is an explanation that I'm missing. Yet, there are 3 very specific incidents that have left me very confused. 1, someone is crying in my estate. Anyone who knows the countryside can tell you that there are many animals that make the weirdest sounds at all times of day, like foxes screaming, and etc. But I have no idea what animal sounds this way. It's never in the same spot and always seems to be coming from someone's back garden or from the farms and fields just beyond the estate. But it is almost like a whimpering and wailing. I've tried to talk to whoever is doing this a number of times, but have never had a response. And any time that I've peeked over a fence where I thought the noise would be coming from, there's nothing that I can see that would make that noise. Just inanimate garden furniture and toys. And this happens extremely often. 2, this one is a little harder to explain, but I found a cat that looked exactly like my old cat that has been dead for almost 9 years. My family has had a few pets, mainly cats, and when I was in high school we had a sleek-looking, very territorial tabby cat that I'll call Fluffy for the sake of privacy. Fluffy would fight large dogs, like boxers, and never lost a fight. Little guy was hard as nails. He always wore a blue collar that we gave him, with a bell that was engraved with his name on the front and our address on the back. Unfortunately, Fluffy was killed by a car at the age of 4, and he's still buried in our backyard. The other night, I was walking back down my estate to go home after a walk, when I get the sudden urge that something is watching me. So I glance behind me without stopping and notice a tabby cat sitting almost directly underneath me. This made me stop in my tracks because, although cats are extremely common all over the estate, it weirded me out that this cat had been right underneath my feet without me seeing or hearing it. I love cats, so I bent down and started petting it, and it was very friendly and instantly purred. I remember actually saying to myself out loud, "Wow, you look exactly like Fluffy, buddy." It too had a blue collar, very similar to Fluffy's old one, and a bell. I checked its collar to see if it had a name, and engraved on the front of the bell was the name Fluffy. This caught me off guard and made me stand up at first because Fluffy's real name was actually quite uncommon for cats. But I regret this because the cat walked away and under a car before I could bend down and check the back of the bell. I'm not insane, and I don't believe it was my actual dead cat coming to visit me or anything, but the coincidence was astounding. It actually looked exactly the same. The collar looked exactly the same, the bell engraving looked exactly the same. It really messed my head up, and I still don't fully understand how I heard the bell as it walked away, but I never heard it before I saw it. Although I could have just been in my own thoughts and not noticed a noise in all fairness. 3. This one is the reason I decided to post this. Right in the middle of the estate, there's a small pond with a few ducks. It's a very nice place to sit and think for a while. That is surrounded by houses on all sides, and only separated by the street. Last night I was smoking a cigarette and enjoying the view, when I saw some movement to my right, near the houses across the street. I thought it was a bat or another cat, but once I looked over, I saw what I can only describe now as a black figure standing in the porch light of someone's front door. Now, we do get the occasional muggards and burglars in our area that are usually dressed head to toe in black, and I've had encounters with these kinds of people in the past, but this person looked almost transparent. I couldn't see them if I looked directly at them. I had to look ever so slightly away from them. My first thought, like I said, that it was a burglar, so I put out my cigarette and made my way over to confront them. The burglars here are usually kind of harmless, and I think they hate to get caught. Very, very few of them have tried to fight me and mostly just run away if someone sees them. So I shouted something along the lines of, "Hey, you all right there, pal?" As I got closer, they were only about some 20 feet away from where I was standing. It began to shift. It's really hard to describe what I mean, but in one moment, all I could see was a dark figure with no details, and the next it was a woman in a dressing gown staring at me. I was close enough to see every detail of her clothing. No shoes or pants that I could see. White woman. Her dressing gown was white with big pink hearts all over it, and she had her hair tied back in a ponytail. She had her arms folded and looked furious at me, like she genuinely had hatred in her face. This was around 3 a.m. at this point, so I found it very odd that she was outside in the cold weather at all. I just paused for a moment before saying, "Oh, sorry, love, I thought I saw someone in front of your house. Have a nice night." And she just stared and stared. I stood there for a good 10 seconds with no response. So I smiled and said, "Have a nice night" again before walking on. I glanced back a few times, and although she never moved, she did not take her eyes off of me. It was incredibly bizarre at first. I thought it was signs of some kind of mental illness for me, but the more I remember that moment, the more I feel sure that I know what I saw. And that's kind of it. There are some other notable moments that were just odd at the time. I'll quickly list them down below. Again, sorry for the length of this post, but I tried to remember every detail as best as I can. I hope at the very least this interests somebody. To be honest, I would love some valid explanations that anyone can offer. I've considered after last night maybe buying a small portable camera to record my walks, and maybe explain some of these weird events. The random notable events as stated above. Exactly 6 parked, turned-off cars all started up and drove away quickly at the exact same moment as I walked past them. Possibly some kind of group meeting or prank. 2. Loud sirens that were completely different to any house or fire alarms in our area, followed by a voice on what sounded to me like a megaphone. No police reports in our area at all in the following weeks. 3. Saw a cat hissing at nothing in the middle of the street, though they do be crazy sometimes. Heard footsteps sprinting around the estate one night and never saw a trace of anyone around. Could have been a jogger, but man, did they have pace. Never heard the footsteps slow down even for a second. Heard a man laughing hysterically in a tiny wooded area that's behind the pond area. It stopped the second I shined my phone's light towards it. Silly person scared the crap out of me at first, but I didn't see anyone, just heard them. This last one is the easiest one for me to rationally explain to myself. I distinctly heard my brother and father shouting for me at 4 a.m. I half jogged, half power walked home to see what was the matter, but everyone in my house was dead asleep. And it was already weird to me because the latest my dad ever normally stays up is around 1 a.m. And personally, I think I was just tired and my brain played a weird auditory trick on me, but it still gave me the goosebumps when I found out that no one had actually said anything. This story isn't too terribly eventful, but it's still one of those stories that comes up between my mother and I because of how weird it was. This happened somewhere around a year ago, back when I was 17. My mother and I were driving around on a Saturday, doing various errands and all, when my mom says that she wants to stop and get coffee. We head to the nearest Starbucks and decide to go in to get our coffee. It was a nice day out, so why not? We get in and we order. My mom goes to pay with her phone, but then realizes that she left it in the car and that she has to go get it. I tell her not to worry, I have the app on my phone too, so I pay for our coffee, I get a free one, no big deal. Everything goes like normal. We go sit down and wait for a few moments. They called my name and I went up to the counter to get the drinks when I noticed that mine was incorrect. I informed the barista, he apologized and said he'll remake it really quick. I agree and decide that I'm going to stay up at the counter while he does so I don't have to sit back down and come back up. I know, I'm lazy. I motion to my mom from across the Starbucks that it'll be another moment, and she looks like she understands. Then, after a couple of seconds, I feel my phone vibrate in my pocket. I pull it out, and it says that my mom is calling me. I glance up to look over, and my mom is sitting at the table cleaning her glasses. I look back at my phone, and yep, it definitely says that the person calling me is my mother. I kind of laughed at first, thinking she must have pocket dialed me, so I decided I was going to answer it. I swipe and put it up to my ear, expecting to hear rustling and the ambience of Starbucks, but when I answer it, it sounds like somebody is crunching paper in front of the microphone. I could hear a strange sound in the background of the static. It was kind of like that tone you get when you turn a radio dial really slowly and the channels that are a bit out of range try to fade in and out. That really strange high-pitched sound of an antenna searching for a signal. I was genuinely confused. I said hello to see if somehow my phone had picked up someone else's call or something. After a few more seconds of static, I could finally hear a voice come in just a bit clearer. But the only thing that I heard it say was, "Do you want to get coffee?" It almost sounded like the conversation that we had had just before we decided to get Starbucks. Like it was recorded and being played back into my ear through a radio or a tape player or something like that. After a couple more seconds, the call just sort of fades out and then ends. I stare at my phone in confusion, but in the end, I just shove it in my pocket and grab our drinks. I get back to the table, and I mention to my mom that I think she somehow pocket dialed me. She then reminds me that she left her phone in the car. That's why I had to pay. Something I had somehow immediately forgotten. This just made the whole situation weirder. I show her my recent calls, and it shows that I did, in fact, receive a call from her, and it lasted 46 seconds. We take our coffee, head out to the car. Lo and behold, her phone is sitting on her dash clip in plain view. She checks it when we get in, and much to both of our surprise, her recent calls shows that her phone did have an outbound call to my phone at the exact same time. There was no one else in the car. Her doors were locked, and there's no way someone would have broken in, grabbed her phone, called me, played back a conversation that was recorded, and then hung up, and then locked the doors again. Honestly, neither of us have any explanation as to how this happened, but part of me thinks it was some sort of alternate dimension or alternate timeline call. One where I hadn't gone with her to run errands, but she called me asking if I wanted to go get coffee. Okay, so I know compared to other people's stories on this sub, this isn't really spectacular, but it's something that really bothers me, and no one else seems interested, so I figured I would share it here. This happened this past September, when I moved cross-country for university. This is important since I don't know many people from South UK, as I've lived my entire life in the north, and I've only come down south for holidays or conventions before now. Early on, I met a few people on my course, and we decided to go to the local Spoons pub chain and meet with a few other people. When we got there, we sat down and chatted for a while before the others arrived, and one guy catches my eye. Not because he was particularly attractive or anything, but because he seemed really familiar. Him and the others sat down and introduced themselves, and we all started getting to know each other. I didn't recognize his name. It's pretty common, but I don't know anyone my age with that name. I figured I'd just forgotten because I'm rubbish with names, and then went to talk to him. I introduced myself and told him he seemed familiar, and he agreed. He said he recognized me, and we spent a while trying to figure out where we knew each other from, and couldn't work it out. He even commented that I had lost weight since we last saw each other, and no one else in my friend group knew that I had lost a substantial amount of weight the 2 years leading up to moving south. He wasn't associated with any of the groups that I was that had brought me to the south before, and he'd never been up north in his life. It was weird, to say the least. We're both sat there convinced we know each other but unable to pinpoint how, and then it hits me. The southern country he's from is apparently the same one my dad is from, but I've never met the man, and my mom's side of the family have very little information on him. So, maybe we're related? I've heard stories of estranged siblings meeting and having things like this happen, and even falling in love because they know they share a bond, but don't know that they are related. So I asked if his surname was the same as my dad's. I don't carry that name, I have my mom's, and explained that apparently my dad is from the same area as him. That's when he drops the bomb. He's originally from Germany, and his whole family were born there. He only moved to the UK with his grandparents when he was around 5. So there's no way that we're related. We're both left entirely stumped and confused, and utterly convinced that we know each other but have no idea how. We've ended up pretty good friends through uni, as we're on the same course and lived in the same building, and so we spent a lot of time together before COVID. We haven't talked much about this since the first week or so that we met, and over time that weird feeling of familiarity has just disappeared. But it still seems so odd to me that we were both convinced we knew each other. I can't decide whether this is some glitch in the Matrix, that we were going to meet and become close friends, or if it's related to the whole past life phenomenon. Honestly, I'm just confused and would appreciate any input that people may have. This happened in August of 2018. My 2 daughters, now 15 and 12, and I, 40 female, were staying with my mom for 3 weeks while we waited to move into our current house. Anyway, my mom lives in this fancy senior community in a 1-bedroom apartment. During our stay there, we slept in the living room on an air mattress. One night, I was blowing up a mattress and my oldest daughter was sitting on the couch, and she says, "Mom, look, the neighbor must have hammered a nail too far into their wall. It's sticking out here." At first, I didn't realize what she was talking about, and then I got up and walked over to her. Sure enough, there was the pointy end of a nail that was sticking out of my mom's wall. I thought that was so weird. I even touched the nail, and then my youngest daughter stood up on the couch and touched it as well. I called for my mom from her bedroom and said to her, "I think your neighbor hammered a nail into the wall a little too far because it's sticking out." And since it was almost 11 at night, and it is a senior citizens community, she didn't want me to knock on their door, so she said she would talk to management in the morning if nobody next door answered. The next day, I get up early to shower for work, and as I was drying my hair with the hairdryer, my oldest daughter comes into the bathroom and says, "Mom, the nail is gone." And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, maybe they just pulled the nail out, but no. She said it looks like the nail was never there. Oh, so I went into the living room and sure enough, I looked at that entire wall and there was no evidence that a nail was even there. The wall was completely flat and there was no hole there. There was nothing. So we went into my mom's bedroom and told her the nail was gone because we were completely confused about the whole ordeal. She had no idea what we were even talking about. She had no recollection about the conversation the night before. My mom is only 65 and she does not have any form of Alzheimer's or dementia or anything. Me and the kids just sat there looking at her like, what? We just talked about this yesterday. You literally came over and looked at the wall yourself and said you were going to talk to the neighbor or management. How do you not remember that? I mean, it was the strangest thing. The four of us saw it the night before, and the next day my mom was so confused because she had no idea what we were talking about. And something that I want to add to this story that I do believe is somewhat relevant is that particular day that we saw the nail, I texted my boyfriend earlier that day and told him I wasn't feeling right, and I literally said to him that I feel like pieces of me are scattered in different dimensions or different realities. That whole day felt weird, and even my kids were feeling weird because while I was at work, my kids were texting me complaining about it. I didn't put two and two together until the following day, after we realized the nail was no longer in the wall. So, I just recently started reading this sub, and tonight, I thought I should share something that happened to me a few years back, and get some opinions. In August of 2016, a group of friends and I went camping in Sequoia. We got to our campsite and set everything up. Then, at one point before sundown, two friends and I decided to go back down the hill a few miles to a general store. We knew the store was there, because we passed it on our way up, and there was only one road. I was in the back seat, and my friend who was driving was playing music through his Bluetooth. On the way down, for some reason, we all took notice of this banner that was to the right. I really wish I remember what it said, but I know we all talked about it. So we got to the store, buy some more beer, tortillas, and a few other items. Doesn't really matter. We get back in the car and start heading up the mountain. After driving for X amount of time, we all look to our left and say, "Hey, didn't we just pass the entrance to our campsite?" So my friend turns back and, sure enough, it was the road that led us back into our camp. At this point, we're all a bit confused. As we're driving into the camp, we all get this really eerie feeling. Everything seemed so dark and quiet. No one was around, even though the campground was pretty full upon leaving. We joked that maybe that we had died and we were now in purgatory, but really we couldn't understand how we got back so quickly. It took us longer to go down than it did to get back up, which should be impossible. We know this for sure because we went through my friend's playlist and counted the times all of the songs we listened to on the way down and on the way up. We also never passed the banner that we had passed on the way down. I tried to play that off as maybe I just wasn't paying any attention and looking down at my phone in that moment, but surely one of them would have noticed. I should add that we had no service, so I don't know what I'd be on my phone for anyway. It was also super dark when we got back, but we had made sure to leave with enough time to make it back before the sun was fully gone. So how did we get back so fast, but also in so long that the sun was gone? After a few minutes of staying in the car and going through everything that happened, it's like the sound started to come back and we heard the rest of our group behind a few bushes at the campfire ring and could see the fire burning. It was just all a pretty weird experience that we just joke about. But since reading this sub, I haven't stopped thinking about it, and maybe it was a glitch and we shifted somehow? Oh, and there was a meteor shower later that night. If that could cause glitches, I don't really know. Hey there, friends. I hope you all enjoyed this really good collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. As always, these are a pleasure to read. Very interesting stories. Really get the brain working there. If you did enjoy this and would like more content on this channel and more content in general here, please consider supporting the channel through Patreon. For $2, you get early access to all videos in audio format. For slightly more, I think it's $6, you get random merchandise, stickers, keychains, stuff like that. And then it just gets better from there. For the 10 and 20, you get posters, random other stuff, and every tier gets a shout out in my video in text form. So, yeah, please do consider it. It helps the channel grow, and it is very much appreciated. All that said, friends, I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope you're ready for more videos, because I don't stop ever, apparently. Anyway, yeah, love you guys. See you in the next video, but until then, sleep well.